You know that feeling, right? That knot in your stomach when you think about money or the future or just what's next? It almost feels like it's just part of being human. But what if all that worry isn't just random noise? What if it's actually a signal pointing to something much deeper? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into that exact idea.
So let me just ask you this straight up. What does your worry reveal about you? Because according to the source material we're looking at, our anxieties aren't just coming out of nowhere. They're actually little signposts pointing directly to the things we treasure most, the things we've attached our entire sense of security to.
Okay, so here's the core idea from Jesus' teaching in the book of Matthew. When we anchor our hearts to things that don't last, money, possessions, even what people think of us, we are naturally going to worry about losing them. It's kind of like building a house on shaky ground. Of course you're going to feel anxious. That instability is exactly what breeds anxiety.
So what's the solution then? Well, the source points us to this verse, Matthew 6:33, as the absolute key. It says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you." Now, this is a call for a total shift in our priorities. To seek his kingdom basically means making God's purposes our main purpose. And seeking his righteousness is all about aligning our lives with his character. The promise here is huge. When we get our main priorities straight, all those other things we worry about, they'll be taken care of.
This brings us right to our first big lesson, and it's all about what we could call eternal investments. It's about consciously shifting where we place our value, moving our focus from things that fade away to things that are truly permanent.
And this whole idea really comes down to a direct comparison. On one side, you've got earthly treasures. The source points out that these things can rot, they can be stolen, or they can just plain lose their value. But on the other hand, you have heavenly treasures, things like acts of generosity, service, and living a life that honors God. These are presented as investments that last forever. They have eternal value, and there's no way they can be lost.
And here's why that difference is so important. Our hearts follow our treasures. It's a simple rule of life. When our focus is on stuff down here, our hearts get all restless and worried because, well, that stuff is insecure. But when we invest in God's kingdom, our hearts get aligned with this eternal, unshakable purpose, and that is the source of real, lasting peace.
So that leads us perfectly into our second lesson, daily trust. Look, this isn't a one-time decision to just value different things. Nope, it's about the ongoing, day-by-day practice of letting go of worry by actively relying on God's care.
To really drive this point home, Jesus gives these two beautiful, simple examples right from nature. He says, look at the birds, look at the flowers. God consistently provides for them. They don't stress out or work themselves into a frenzy, yet all their needs are met. This is meant to show us God's faithful, consistent care in action.
And this all builds to a really powerful, logical question. If God provides for the rest of creation in this way, won't he also provide for his own children? The argument is that worry is just a distraction. It keeps us from focusing on what truly matters. So trusting God actually frees up our minds to live out his will with confidence.
Okay, so these big ideas are great, right? Invest in the eternal, trust God daily, but how do we actually do that in real life? This next section is all about shifting from the what to the how with a super practical, actionable framework for putting this trust into practice.
This slide just lays it out in a clear 4-step path. First, you got to examine your values. Be honest about what you're really chasing. Second, start making decisions that build that eternal value we talked about. Third, make it a habit to seek God's guidance first every day. And finally, number 4, you have to consciously release your worries into God's hands. Just let them go, trusting him for what's ahead.
So let's just boil this all down into one clear definition. When the Bible talks about seeking the kingdom, here's what it means. It means making God's purposes and his righteousness your absolute #1 priority, above everything else, while living with this foundational trust that he is going to provide for your daily needs.
And really, at the end of the day, this is the goal of this whole mindset shift. It's not just about getting rid of worry. It's about gaining something so much bigger, a deep sense of peace and purpose that changes how you live today and secures your eternity.
So we'll end with a question for you to really think about. Based on everything we've just talked about, what is one specific worry, it can be big, it can be small, that you can consciously decide to release into God's hands, starting right now?